That was Sons of Arca from their album Cosmic Jungle Bandy, and I'm delighted to welcome to the show Professor Stanley Unwin. Stanley, you've worked many times with the Sons of Arca. When did you first meet them?
Oh yes indeed. It was an autumnal afternoon when I first met Sons of Arca. It was a dull day in Dockland, East End of London. It was made bright by an enthusiastic gathering in a subterranean recording studio, you know, all down the earth there like Orpheus and the undergrowth. They had their instruments all tuney-hubber and ready to go into music-holly. Oh, joy.
The guiding light of Sons of Arca is known as Wadada. How did you get to know him, and what do you think of his musical philosophy?
Well, we first met on the long-distance telephoto. I immediately detected his interest in the comparative of the religions and the reconciliation of the multi-religion thinking in the milode of the people. If you like, a code of behoved, you know, and mutual toleratings throughout the ages. Oh, it's a timeless thing, all rather profoundy. I thought Arca had a good point there.
You did a single many years ago with the Sons of Arca called Erasmus Meets the Earthling. We're going to hear that track in a moment. But can you first tell me a bit more about the philosopher Erasmus?
Oh, yes, indeed. Desiderius Erasmus was, of course, a widely travelled man, all over the globe, Huffalo Dowder. He loved letter-writing, scribbly-ho, and we have over 3,000 of these today, you know. He was also a friend of Sir Thomas More, who disagreed about Henry VIII being top of the church loaders, you know, Rex Fidelio and all that. And, of course, therefore he had his head off from Chopney, didn't he, Block? Oh, folly, that was sad, yeah. Yes, Erasmus greatly influenced the Reformation, and disagreed with Martin Luther quite a bit, you know. But there was no fisticuffs, you see, because Erasmus was a very gentle man there, who little approach with a little gesture, softly persuaded how in his words. Oh, there was a great communicators of joy in that.
Stanley, in that track you also mention William Shakespeare. Now, what do you think about him?
I believe Shakespeare was the greatest satirist of all, you know. His subtle humour, deep in the brain bocker of his mile, allowed him to put all the serious things of his day, like royalty there, all crown, alber and sceptre and dangly, politicals, social behoved, egotism there, and snobbery, up-nose and sticky how, if you understand me. He put all these into perspective. His genius was that he was able to entertain everybody and avoid offensive to those if you might otherwise have him behead and chop off like Thomas More, you see, or perhaps even assassinated, because like his contemporary Christopher Marlowe, who, as you know, had a knife and snappy in the chest there in Deptford in South East London. Oh, folly.
I understand you're very much into poetry, so what are your thoughts, for example, on Coleridge and Wordsworth?
Oh, that's a question splendy-ho, yes. You see, a whole programme could be covered on these two great poets, each so different in character and convey the broad canvas of humanity thoughtless in their imaginative thinking. Now, take Coleridge's Ancient Mariner or Kubla Khan. Now, one, the vivid word picture of a violent sea, their rushing waves runs man overboard, through this folly. What, the rugged rocks and endurance of man at odds, and yet it were in harmony with the great forces of the cosmos. Now, with Wordsworth, the subtle beauties at the other end of the spectrum, in nature, in solitude, like wandering lonely as a cloud all dangling in the heavenly abode, and suddenly that host of daffodowndillies all jumping Huffalo Dowdy in the breeze, just like his heart does at the end, when on his couch in pensive moody lie, thoughts flash upon his inward eyeball. That is really Wordsworth giving it his most communique of the joys of nature itself.
Tell me, have you heard of Ralph Waldo Trine?
Trine? No. I fear Mr. Trine seems to escape my curriculode. You see, I wonder if perhaps his first names were taken from Ralph Waldo Emerson, you know, the sage of Concord or Massachusetts. The nearest name that comes to my mind is the Antipodean S. Trine, who used the pseudonym Shrine as an alternative form of English Australian, to communicate idiomatically down under, you see. You see, Cobber, the way to talk down under is to invent your own language, which they do so well, and call it Shrine, you see.
Now, you've an amazing gift of language, and it seems to me an intuitive feel for rhyme and rhythm.
Well, I believe it was based on the desire to emulate all the writers, both comic and serious, whose works had fascinated me since childhood. By accident, I found that in a difficult situation, when in a desperately nervous state, I tried to explain to a policeman why I was facing the wrong way, half a load down the street, my words just jumbled out, but containing the gist of my predicament, which I was in. Now, the policeman was most helpful because he understood my meaning, you see, but later, when he thought about it, my BBC colleague laughed so much I found that my language vehicle could be used to entertain people who little give a chuckload or a smile was fold, anything like that. Not so much a belly laugh, though, but a little lip smiley that creating keeps on and on and on. Oh, yes.
Absolutely fascinating. What do you think of the rap movement, and where do you think this talking in music comes from?
Well, I feel that rap artists need a particular mood for the enjoyment and performance of their work. I believe it's a mistake to think of rap as music alone. It's the combinations of monologue and the music back, if you understand me, and perhaps in a way it could be considered as a reportage of the human scene, like the folk music and that. And apart from this, I'm looking forward to more analysis of this art. Oh, yes.
We'll be listening a little later to some other tracks you did with Sons of Arca, Sostenuto Off to Pluto, and then the very first track you did together, Deep Journey. These tracks seem to be asking the purpose of the universe, about its beginnings and where it's going to end.
What a profoundly questy-ho. Wow. In cosmic terms, the universe must be a continuum, mustn't it? Otherwise it would need to be contained within another something, you see, something within something else. Now, I personally would describe the universe as unbounded and infinite. But I do believe also that it could be defined more clearly to more of us when our senses are further developed to comprehend its infinite wonder. I believe that human strife and wars may be delaying the furtherance of this knowledge we can pack in our brain boxes to become more perfect. Going to be difficult, isn't it? Oh, yes.
And where does God fit into all this? What do you think God is?
The supreme being of the universe, who gives us free will, either to destroy ourselves or to use what he has given us to make what we decide to be the best of it. Yes. Well, I believe that each one of us is a part of the sum total force existing in the cosmos, you see.
And what do you think will happen at the end of life's journey?
Oh, how can one begin to answer this one? I mean, when we're buried in the ground, our bodies slowly disintegrate us, become part of Mother Earth there, the worms creeping crawling in, centipedals, and all these creeping up low down to our bodies. Whoa. And now, look, if we're cremated, we become part of the heat, which rises up these crematorium chimload up into the heavenly abode. I mean, as I said, we become part of the sum total force of the universe. We couldn't be more equal than that, don't you think?
OK, so let's move on to another somewhat controversial subject. Do you think we should still be eating animals, and can we really communicate with them?
Well, naturally, our communication with animals is a vehicle of instinct, you know. It's all in the mylode. If they like what they smell in us, and that is to say, they go, human being, yeah, sniffy, yeah. And if they like the sounds we make in our approach to them and those smells, they're more likely to respond in a friendly way to our advances, aren't they? I mean, from time immemorial, even in biblical days, we've eaten animals shuffled down the throat. I mean, what about cannibals? You ask, should we still be eating animals? Well, my conscience says no. I enjoy a tender steak less and less each time I see one on my plate there. And then I think about the agonized cry of a nice crisp cos lettuce as I bite its heart out. Pass the salt, ducky. But I will try to stop eating meat before I die.
Colours. Do you think there are any more colours, or have we seen them all? And how do they relate to sound?
I do not believe there are any more colours. Of course, there are more than we see directly in the rainbow. I mean, the shades of the combinations of the three primaries and their intermixy-ho, I mean, they relate to sound, since you ask, through their juxtaposition within the spectrode itself. The whole spectrode, the whole of life and cosmos and everything is a sort of spectrum. It contains all these things. Now, rather in the way, shall we say, Indian and other musical cultures compare with that of the Western worm, with their quarter tones there, yeah, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, instead of whole tones and half tones, they have quarter tones, you see, and the glissando, bong, like that, see. Ravici Sanko and all these wonderful players. Now, any possible extension of these senses may come given uninterrupted development of the human species. Oh, yes.
Tell me, do you think there's music on other planets? And does it some sort of divine purpose?
Divine. Well, we sometimes express music as divine, don't we? For example, in the slow movement of Mozart's clarinet concerto, or perhaps in parts of Bach's St. Matthew Passion. But I don't see it as having more divine purpose than the creation itself, which of course is the great design and most divine thing one can begin to imagine with the limits of our thinking at all. Regarding other planetary music, we may confirm early in the next century that this music may be very similar to our own inspired stuff, you know. As for the nearest solar system, we'll take Alpha in Centauri. Now, if we get there before they come to us, we can do a compare thunderbolt, can't we? The musical nopas, rhythmic contrapole, tonic solfadi, stuffly notakers, all these things. Oh, yes.
Stanley, thank you so much for joining us. And before you go, do you have a message for any young people who may be listening?
Well, thank you for inviting me into the world of Arca. Yes, I would like to suggest in my 83rd year a few words which I think from experience certainly brought hope to me, and I hope this may help young people too. I found these words to be moderation, tolerance, loyalty, love, stability and truth. I've put them in that order because I think the last one is the most important, truth, of course. But love is so close to it, you could almost bracket them together. But of course, stability, you see, we must have. Otherwise, we shan't be able to go forward, shall we, and begin to understand those things which you questioned me of so deeply today. Oh, yes. Do try to read works done by authors who stand for these qualities, and your teachers or parents may be able to help you here. Oh, yes.
Well, thank you for those very wise words.